Want to tell you about one of our partners, Quetzal Education Consulting. Quetzal Education Consulting is a queer, Black, and Indigenous women-owned firm offering anti-racist consulting, PD, coaching, keynotes, workshops, and more. Their newly released Abolitionist Teaching Workshop series coaches and prepares teachers to further develop abolitionist practices in the classroom. Find out why they have been called the future of educational justice by Dr. Bettina Love. You can book a free consultation with Quetzal by calling 510-397-8011 or visiting quetzalec.com. That is quetzalec.com. And if you mention you heard about them through Two Dope Teachers, you will receive a 5% discount on their Abolitionist Teaching PD series. Once again, you can book them by visiting quetzalec.com on their Connect With Us page.
All right, everyone, we're here with a new episode. The exit interview is back, and we have a new guest, Arvian Harper. We are so excited to have you on the show. Kevin, say what up to the people.
What up? How's everybody doing? It's great to be back here. So happy to get into Arvian's interview. You know, Asia, I think we have to acknowledge that something has changed since maybe the last time we got with the people. You are a doctor now.
Yes.
So give it up for you. That's it. Dr. Lyons to y'all. No, y'all, she's still Asia. She hasn't blown up on us yet.
Yeah, that you know of.
Yeah, that I know of. That's right.
Right. They know me in these streets, kind of, sort of.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, Arvian, we're excited to hear your story. I think we talked about what, there are questions that we always ask folks. So we're going to just go ahead and jump right in. First question always is, tell us your journey into education. What made you decide to become an educator?
All right. Well, first, thank you for creating space for people like educators like me to tell our story. So my journey started, I actually I worked in DPS, and I went to DPS schools from ECE through 12th grade, graduated from East High School. Shout out to the Angels. High school. And so, and from there, I was actually the president of the engineering club at East, and went to Boulder to see you on a full ride scholarship to their engineering program.
Nice.
And by the time I got ready to go, I was like, I really don't want to be an engineer. I want to be a doctor. And so I switched my major, and that first year Boulder did me in. That's a whole story on its own. But it just was not a good fit. Program wise, school wise, it was terrible. And so I came back to Denver and kind of tried to find my way, worked full time, got my own place, took classes here and there, and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I always had a passion for teaching. I always had a passion for little kids. And people would tell me oh, you should be a teacher. And I'm like, teachers don't make no money. I don't, I'm not doing that. And so, but that's where my heart was. And so I stumbled across a preschool teaching program at CCD, and was like, well, let me just take a couple of classes to see, because at that time I was in my early 20s, and I wasn't making any progress, and I wasn't figuring it out. And so instead of trying to follow the money, I was like, well, my heart really is in teaching. I would love to teach, especially the littles. So got my certifications from CCD. They had preschool certification, infant toddler, and director certification, did that. and then fell in love, was working in the classroom, fell in love. It was a lab school. So not only was I like teaching the kids, but the adult students would come to observe the classroom, and the professors would like kind of guide them through things. And so I loved like that mentorship aspect. So I went to UNC. They have an urban education program at Lowry, and they had just started an early ed program. So I went there, was the first graduate from that early ed cohort, and went right into DPS. I started as a para, then was a sub, and then I started teaching Head Start. I fell in love, went to kindergarten, and it was my place. I felt like that I had arrived. And so at that time, each grade that I went to, I wanted to have more of an impact. The district started doing like coaching, like they were doing the evaluation program, but they started to think like, what if we made teachers coaches too? And they taught half-time, and that is a full district-wide thing now. But at the time when it first started, we were piloting it. And I'm like, I would love to do that. I want to have more of an impact. And so did that for a few years, and then went into administration as a dean of instruction at Cole Arts and Science Academy. And yeah, and that was my journey.
Yeah. So from the time that you finished your certifications until, spoiler alert, she's no longer teaching. We know that. How many years were you in the education space, in the traditional education space?
So from the time that I started, like when I first started like teaching private ECE.
Yes.
16 years.
16 years. Wow.
Yeah. And 14 of those years with DPS.
Oh, wow.
So impressive. So impressive. And I love, that you worked your way through it. And I think I can relate always to these stories of like setting out to do one thing, in college, and then finding teaching, and then having a love and a passion for it, that you're describing. And then also, I would just always say this, shout out to the ECE teachers, all the ECE kindergarten, the early years, the people that like put it all together and make it happen. I'm in awe of my ECE kindergarten, all of that up to like third grade. Y'all, like, not to say the people after that aren't, but like y'all are putting it all together and dealing with all sorts of stuff. So, and I know, I'm part of the DCTA bargaining team right now. And I know I sit on the team with a couple of ECE teachers, and I know that shout out to them and all of y'all ECE teachers, that you don't always have the resources needed to accomplish the work or the time. And there's a lot of needs. So I just have to acknowledge that. So you have all this passion, you're working your way all the way through it, right? You've come up, you've found it. But as Asia alluded to earlier, you are no longer a teacher. So can you tell us about some of your experiences as an educator, as a Black woman, that you encountered working in the school district that you went to, that you've lived in? Let's just say that, right? Let's say it that way. The school district that you've lived in. But talk about some of those experiences that you had as you went through this system.
That's a really great question. At the very beginning of my journey, first, I couldn't get hired. So let's call that what it is. I graduated summa cum laude, like had all of this experience because I had been working in private before I was transitioning into public. And so like my resume wasn't there, and yet I was transitioning into DPS. I applied for at least 20 to 25 schools, could not get hired, could not get an interview. And so it was finally like this Black woman at my church who had worked in DPS for a long time and was retired, who then knew some principals and was like, can you just interview her? And so the very first one that called me, I did that interview, and that's the job that I got. And so, and from there, I later learned like a lot of principals went with Teach for America candidates, like they were more of a sure thing. That again could probably be its own conversation. And so from there, I always, I felt like I was trying to, I spent the majority of my career trying to be Black excellence. I wanted the students, I wanted the rest of the staff to be able to see like not just a Black educator, but like I wanted to be the cream of the crop. You know, I wanted to be the top. I wanted their experience to be so rich, so different, so authentic, so natural, so free. And so that was kind of what I held with me. And with the kids at first, I was really impactful. Like I got distinguished 3 years in a row because they told me you could only, like, if you ever actually get it, you'll only get it once. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Challenge accepted.
Got you.
And so once I was able to do that, then I'm like, this, everything is a system, right? Like we approach it as a system. So then when the coaching opportunity came, I wanted to then like kind of shift the way that we think about educating and the way that we think about teaching. And so it was I constantly felt this call to have more impact outside of what my hands were directly on. However, you know, like the higher that I went up in title, the more I felt like my hands were tied. And so I was having even less of an impact than I thought that I would.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because we've heard that from several folks who've come on our podcast where there has been like some assumption that, well, if I just get to this place, then surely I'll be able to make the impact that I want to make sure that our kids get what they need. And it's just like not happening over and over again, right? And this is different districts all over the country, really. Now at this point, we've been, you know, interviewing folks from all over, right, Kevin?
Yep, for sure. It's a common thread.
Yeah. So our next question is like, what was that last straw where it was just like, it's time to go? What was that situation or situations that helped you decide like, I'm not distinguished or not, it's just time to move on?
Yeah, my transition to administration was also a shift. It was a change in school. So it was a lot of newness happening. And that school, that year, the first week of school, we had a shooting on campus. Within that first month, we had a gun like on site. And then that was the year of the strike. So you could imagine, again, even just being in administration during that time, I was also on a team of leaders of color, all new to role. And so the lack of like support that we had was mind-blowing. However, it was an impacted community, the community that's the east side of Denver. Those are my people. Like this is the work. This is what I wanted to be excellent, to be in a space like this, to do this type of work. So while on one side, I felt like I was being beat down by the lack of support in doing the work, I was still so encouraged and empowered by the community that I was in. And so, and then the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so that created a whole other thing. And I still wrote it through. The other two leaders left at the very beginning, and I still kind of wrote it out. But then the pandemic was hard on me personally. And so I had some grief that I was working through, which led me to going to therapy and getting some support. And I started to prioritize my wellness in a way that not only had I never done in my life, but was never modeled for me by any other adult or any of my peers. And so the space that I had to like do a deep dive where I thought I was going for grief, but what unpacked, especially that was caused through like being a Black educator in these streets, I was like, I can't prioritize my healing and do this work this way. Like, not, they both can't coexist. Not for me, and certainly not right now. And so that led me to work part-time last year, where I could maintain both. I was not a homeroom teacher, and I was only there half of the time. And then my wellness and healing was the other half of the time, on top of, like, you know, we still got a mother and all that. And through that is where I like started to, as I started to peel off some of that trauma, I'm like, there's a whole person here that I don't know. There's a whole person here that cares about other stuff too. And there's another way to do things. And so, so from there, I worked part-time last year and decided to start like 2 other businesses. Never thought I would be an entrepreneur. That was like not on my list, but here we are, and still doing the work, but just doing it differently.
Yeah, I want to back up a little bit, because we haven't asked this question in a while, Kevin. And now that you mentioned your children, I want to ask the question of, when you were having like experiencing this shift, right, where it was like, I'm going to start going to therapy, I'm going to start taking care of self, and like really rejecting what was happening in the school space, how did your family support that work? Or did it? I don't want to make an assumption. Yeah. How did they or did not support you going to part-time, making these shifts, and, you know, things like that? We'll get into the part about you having two different careers right at this moment, but I love to know more about the family aspect of that.
Yeah, that family aspect is huge, because, as you know, like, you don't always have the privilege. Like, working part-time was something I never was able to do in my adult life. Like, we needed the adults to work the whole time. And so that really caused, like, I went to my husband the first few months into therapy, and I'm like, this can't, like, this is starting to unlock a whole different space for me, and I can't go back full time. So I need you to pick up my other half. And what does that look like? And how does that shift our life? And so he then changed things so that it created some financial freedom for me, and which made him like gone more. And then my mother-in-law and my mother like started to support more with the kids. So then it's really easy for mothers to then put their, I have free time, I have free energy, like, it's going into the children in the household. But my 2 mothers then picked up that slack on that end, so that it gave me space. And I was very transparent of what that space was for and why I had to have it. And so with my family, I feel like they have all been supportive, and it's something that I've said before, but it's just healing and like wellness is for everybody. Like, everybody needs it, and not everybody has the access or understanding for it. And I felt like my transparency made it so, like, even though the people in my life weren't governing their lives that way, they would be able to learn from my process. And so it was important to me to be really open about what that looks like. And I am so grateful, because then I was able to take the space needed without any extra burden on my family.
I think that's really interesting. And Asia can tell you, like, I think there is this toll for Black women educators that we haven't really delved into. And I think there's a different experience based on our interviews and my own experience as a Black male educator that Black women are going through that. And I think when you center what you said, your journey was about, to that wellness. was part of that space of like finding yourself as a Black woman and managing, you know, your obligations or what you perceive to be your obligations even, right? And the whole big picture. So I think that's an important point to
Yeah,
really go ahead.
Sorry, that's a huge point, because a lot of my self-work was like wrestling with the responsibility. Like me, I was always functioning at like way over my capacity. And so when there is space for me to do nothing, it was so hard for me to do nothing, like quote unquote, like to pull back. I felt like I had to deal with like, I'm not doing enough. You know, I'm only at the school part-time. So I'm only doing so much there. And even here, I'm not doing as much. And that was a part of the work, is like holding that space, and even doing what I was doing was more than enough, but understanding that and feeling like we're as in Black women are always over. We're always over the threshold. We're always functioning way past what is healthy and safe. And so that was its own and still is its own journey.
That's I'm so glad we asked that question. And I'm just thinking about all the Black women in education and outside of education who are listening to this podcast. And I hope that they're hearing, right? Like, you don't have to run around busy. I was talking to a good friend of mine who's been on the podcast, Stacey Brandon. Shout out to Stacey Taylor Brandon. And I was specifically talking about like reclaiming the word lazy, because she was like, I don't mean to say lazy, but I just want to hang out. And I'm like, yeah, let's reclaim lazy.
That's right. Hashtag reclaim lazy.
Yeah, like I want to be lazy, and I don't want to feel like, okay, well, I'm gonna wait till I can hear the door open up and then jump up and start vacuuming. I don't want to do that. I want to be lazy. I want to be lazy and be okay with that, and not have all the guilt behind that. Right. Thank you for sharing that piece. So then our question we ask, and Kevin always laughs because he already knows how I feel about this, but what do you think that unions and school districts and admin can do? She's already shaking her head. Kevin, did you see that?
Up. Now, hold on, Asia. Hold on. She could be shaking her head because she's got something really profound that we haven't heard on this question.
Something's telling me, Kevin, that's not the case, but I'm just going to go ahead and see what she says. What do you think unions, admin, school districts can do to keep Black educators in the classroom or in the education space in the traditional sense?
This question is really, so I really feel like, number one, there is the system, the spaces are not created for Black educators. And so the space in essence, the systems in essence, they need to be a nurturing space for Black educators to show up authentically, and where they are also like acknowledging the experience and the knowledge that they're bringing to the table, and it's valued. And this looks like them being involved in the work. Like, you should be able to kind of, it's like that sense of with your kids, like, I know that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, even if I'm not, like, even if I didn't ask them or tell them. So you should be able to see the effects of what it looks like for a system to be honoring their Black educators by the work that is there. And so what does that look like in the self-awareness for the individuals and the program awareness? Do the Black educators have an authentic space at the table? And what is that like in shifts in mindsets and actions? And then you gotta pay them. Like, that is where we are. The value that Black educators have, obviously to students of color, but to everyone, everyone needs to be on the same page of recognizing that this is not a Black thing. This is like the right thing. And once that is accepted, and once you are, again, valuing them in that space, and like I would say, question systematically, like program wise, what value looks like for your Black educators, then they'll be there. And pay is involved, like pay.
And that's it.
So, Arvian, do I have permission to play this segment at the bargaining table on Wednesday when we go back? We take this part out, but yeah, this is like what we've been saying. They don't seem to hear us on the points that you're making, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and go to commercial break. We'll be back in a little bit.
We are back. I am Kevin Adams, and we are here with Dr. Asia Lyons and our guest, Arvian Harper. And Arvian has just been telling us about her journey through the Denver public school system. And we just say, for life, a lifer. But now she's finally been sprung, right? So Asia, if you want to pick back up.
Yeah, so my favorite question, and the reason why I decided this was a great podcast to have in the first place is, now that you've left traditional classroom spaces, what are you doing now? What are you doing with your time? How are you filling your days or not filling your days? Tell us as much as you would like to tell us. Give us all the details.
Yeah. So for my traditional work now is I'm doing educational consulting, which allows me the space to still do the work. And that is what is important to my heart. And so being able to support schools and support nonprofits and people who are committed to doing the work differently, they're showing up with authentically and with integrity and accountability, and where the awareness on like what we're doing and who we're doing it for and the impact on that has been, in just a short amount of time, has been so beautiful and exactly like what my heart needed, because I care about the work. So for that looks like me doing more coaching, which I love, because coaching is so connected to teaching. And so that brings me so much joy. Some curriculum development and like leading professional learning. And so all of the things that I did when I was working for the district. And the other side to my life is I have a passion project, and I have a mobile espresso bar and bookshop, and I make the best coffee. Like, coffee for me is unlike any that you've ever had. I make all of my syrups from scratch. And I also, so it's legit. It is an experience. And I also sell books for all ages from just Black authors. And so
wow, pause. Wait a minute. Wait a second. First of all, when we talked, you did not mention this book part. So I was trying to hold it down. Like, I'm like, wait a minute, we'll discuss.
Big.
Listen to me. Okay, we're gonna talk after this, because go ahead, just continue. Go ahead.
And so I love coffee. At first, for me in my adulthood, was a necessity, but now it brings me so much joy, brings me so much peace, brings me so all of the good feels. And so to be able to make like really good coffee for people, like with my like Black girl magic on it, has been wonderful. And then I am such a reader, literacy like teacher, lover. And so again, bringing these stories that are written by Black people is just a beautiful thing. So I do local markets. I'm always at Rebel Marketplace, which is every first and third Saturday at Del Mar Park. And yeah, so my time is spent doing the things that I love only. That's the only space that I hold.
There we go. We love that.
We need name of your consulting firm,
Yeah.
and then the name of your coffee book, magical, all that.
Yeah.
Emails, ways they can reach you, things like that. We need details.
Okay. My consulting LLC is ALH Ed Consulting. And you can send me an email, aharper@alhedconsulting.com. Also, you can also find me on social media. My coffee company is called Awakening Cafe, and it's on Instagram. And you can also message me there. And then I do other local markets, but the one that I'm always at is Rebel Marketplace, which is also it's a beautiful space created for like people of color, urban farmers, and it is every first and third Saturday at Del Mar Park.
And you take your coffee cart, your book cart, and you take it to schools, I've heard. So it's mobile. People can call you, corporate, schools, philanthropy, call you, and you'll show up.
Yeah, absolutely. We just did 5 schools in 1 week, and set up coffee for their teachers that were doing PD. And so again,
Nice.
Teachers love coffee, but like my coffee is a whole other experience.
It has that black girl magic coffee.
That's right.
That's the real deal.
It was beautiful. So yeah, we do events, we do like we'll cater a meeting, all of that. Schools, businesses, it's great.
Kevin, did you notice when she's talking, like look at her face?
She's smiling.
So hard.
She's smiling.
So much happiness.
Yeah, that's so dope.
A testament to getting out.
Yeah.
So Asia is smiling too, because whenever she hears these stories, she's just like, yes, more inspiration for the movement.
Yeah. Yeah. And specifically too, we've had a lot of folks who've gone into consulting or a nonprofit sector and different things. We've had just a few folks who've gone totally out of the box of education. Michael Diaz Rivera has his cannabis company where he does like
deliveries.
Deliveries. I think it's Better Days Deliveries. I think it is
something. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and so it's really cool that I always ask that question. We ask this question because we want folks to know, like, it's not, you don't have to just be with you or run away completely. You can do something of both or in between. To think about the things that you love, that are your passion projects or things that you've been thinking about doing, and show up. And I've experienced coffee carts lots of times, right? And so like, what does it mean for us to just really get creative, sit down and say like, what do I love to do? What was going to make me smile in the morning? Even though I have 5 schools to get to, I'm totally okay with. And so yeah, like shout out to you and folks who are out there saying, you know what, I've said this before, Kevin and I, we talk about this all the time. We don't die, we thrive out here.
That's
right?
it.
Yeah. So our last question, our favorite, Kevin, I'll let you ask it. Go ahead.
So our last question. Hold on, Asia. You go ahead and ask it. You got to remind me.
Okay.
It's been a minute.
What's bringing you joy these days?
There we go. Thank you. That's what I thought it was. I want to make sure.
So much. Being free is bringing me joy. Being open, being able to be creative and adventurous, and just me, and like the self-discovery has brought me so much joy. In reading, like I get to read all the time, and I am such a bookworm. So that's hard to do when you are working the 9 to 5, and then after you work, you still working, like you working on the weekends. I couldn't read like that. And so now I can read all the time. And so that is bringing me all the joy.
Wow.
That's fantastic. Right, well, I love your story, because like it in Asia always, I think that's her goal with every season, is to get me to say, that I'm leaving, but you just give me these options. And I always say, I don't want to, there's certain stuff, but your coffee cart, it's got me thinking. It's got me thinking of all of the possibilities. I could be out there and do my thing, you know, and as you point out, we got a lot to offer. We got a lot to offer.
So much.
Yeah.
It's I was always great. I always did everything with a certain level of excellence. Like I was always committed to the work. And the person that I am now with my like liberation is so different. And it's like there is space for me to still show up in excellence, right? But still be free, and so much joy comes along with that. And it's powerful.
Yeah, I love that. The liberation, the freedom. Oof. Okay. Well, good folks, another fantastic episode of the Exit Interview. We'd like to thank you all for listening. Again, check out Arvian, check out what she's doing. If you're in the corporate space in the Denver metro area, call her, support Black business. Make sure you get these syrups. Make sure you get these books, right? So if you're not in education, that's okay, right? Get out there and support her work. We
That's
appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you so much. I was so glad to be here.
Yeah. All right. Well, you all have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.